Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you're having a wonderful morning. In this video, we are going to be going over section 2.2 exercises. So I talked to you guys a little bit about how you guys are totally killing it on chapter 4, which is something great to see in our discussions. You're seeing your peers are totally understanding when to use the circle, what direction, and all that. Maybe not at first, but after a while, the discussion got going. We had a really good understanding overall. But what is really just causing some anxiety is fractions. So as soon as if I give you a problem that includes whole numbers, you guys knock it out, no problem. But I give you a fraction problem, and right away our little brains they're like, oh my God, what is that? And so we're just going to be doing some practice to get comfortable with it, because I know you guys know how to do it. It's just that you're not comfortable with it yet. So that's the goal here. So if you're watching the section 2.2 video, it means you are on section 2.2 on big ideas. And the first exercise, it wants us to find the sum of -1 1/5 and plus -3/5. So there is two ways to do this. There is a systematic way, and then there's a just really easy conceptual way of doing this. We're going to do both. I'm not going to use the same numbers because I don't want to give you the answer. So I'm going to make up my own problem here. I'll do -2 and 3/4 plus, let's do -2 and 1/4 plus -2/4. So just about the same kind of problem. We've got a mixed number on the left side and then a fraction on the right side, and then both of them have the same denominator. So we're not going to need to find the lowest common denominator here. We already have it. And what we are going to do for this, first let's do the systematic way. So systematic. That means we're going to be using some techniques in order to figure this out. Well, whenever we're doing fractions, whenever we're adding fractions, we don't want to have any mixed numbers there, because sometimes it can throw us off. In this case, where they're both negative, it won't throw you off too much, but when it's positive and a negative, that might throw you off a little bit. So let's turn that mixed number into an improper fraction by taking the denominator, multiplying it by the the mixed number, whole number, and then adding it to the numerator. So that's 4 times 2 plus 1 gives me -9/4. And then plus -2/4, no need to make that change in the denominators because they already have the same denominator. So we're just going to add straight across after that. So we're going to do -9 plus -2. You should say -11. And then 4 plus 4 is still 4, because this is -9/4 plus -2/4. So our answer is still going to be in fourths, or -11/4. And then we would figure out, well, what is -11/4 as a mixed number in simplest form? And we could determine that by taking the top number and dividing it by the bottom number. So we would do 11 divided by 4. 4 goes into 11 2 times with a remainder of 3. And so my answer becomes -2 and 3/4. Now, this isn't the answer for this exercise 5 question. This is the answer for the example that's very similar to the exercise 5 question. But another way of doing this problem was I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Another way of doing this problem is by just conceptually kind of understanding what these fractions look like. Oh, dang it. What these fractions look like in their form. So if we actually were to draw a circle to represent these, and I'm about to draw the most perfect circle you've ever seen. Killer. All right. So I've drawn this circle, and I've got -2 and 1/4. So I've got 2 whole. I should just copy this. So I've got 2 holes. There's 1 hole, there's 2 holes, and then 1/4. And I'm going to be adding that 2 and 1/4 to a -2/4. And so I've got this part. This is one part of my numbers that I'm summing, and then this is another part. This is the -2/4. And when I add them together, you can see that because they're both negatives, we're really just going to be adding the numbers together. We're just going to be adding this 2/4 to the other fractions we've got over there. Hopefully you can see this. So you can see that I just added those 2/4 to the -2 and 1/4. And now I have -2 and 3/4, just like we got last time. And so because they were both negative, we were able to do that. If they had been one positive and one negative, we would have had to subtract, so we wouldn't have been able to do that. But because they're both negative, we're really just adding them together, and they already have the same denominator. So just adding them together like that gave us our answer, negative 2 3/4. We didn't actually need to solve anything out. We're just adding those 2/4 to that 1/4, which is 3/4. So hopefully that made sense. Go ahead and try it out with this problem that you have. Let's move on to exercise 8. Exercise 8 is different from exercise 5 in the sense that exercise 8 has a positive and a negative number. So I'm going to do my own example. I'll do 5 plus negative 2 2/3. On this one, this is where I would recommend using the systematic form. So actually turning these numbers both into fractions, and you are going to have to find the lowest common denominator. I would recommend that just because since this is a whole number 5, that's a positive, and then this is a negative, it could be a little confusing as to how to utilize that.
If you have students who have been given the orange-colored Azella pass and have been tested...
So let's go ahead and turn these both into just fractions. 5 can turn into a fraction very simply by putting a 1 underneath it. And then we're going to need to turn this negative 2 2/3 into a fraction by doing the cartwheel system that we did last time. So we're going to take the 3, multiply it by the 2, and then add it to the 2 up here. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So this becomes 5 over 1 plus negative, don't forget that negative, 8/3. And then now the next thing we need to do is we need to find the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator of 1 and 3 is going to be 3, because 1 can go into 3 if we multiply that 1 by 3, which means we have to multiply the 5 by 3, giving us now 15/3, which is the same as 5 over 1, because 15 divided by 15 divided by 3 equals 5, and 5 divided by 1 equals 5. So those are the same value. And we're going to add negative 8/3 to that. Why didn't we change the 3 on the bottom of the 8? Because it's already part of the lowest common denominator, so we didn't need to make any changes to that one. Finally, we'll finish it up by adding these two together. 15 plus negative 8/3 is going to give me positive 7/3. 3 goes into 7 2 times with a remainder of 1, so this becomes a positive 2 1/3 for our example. And you're going to use that same technique for the number, for exercise 8, where you're going to add 4 and then negative 1 2/3. Exercise 11. So when you're doing these decimals, think about it in terms of money. I think that we do really well when we think about things in terms of monies because we're used to working with money. We know how to add and subtract cents and how to add and subtract whole dollars and what it means to have less than a dollar, which means to have some sort of coin value. So that's the decimals part. And so with these ones, if I have $12.48, and then I'm going to add negative 10 is the same thing as taking away money because these are different signs we're going to be subtracting. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 10.636 or 10 636 thousandths from 12 48 hundredths. And then just make sure that you line up your decimals. That's definitely the most important part here. And so I'm going to put the decimal and then the 10 goes on the left side. And then I'm going to make sure that my place values line up here. So 636. This is my tenths place. This is my hundredths place. And then this is my thousandths place. And now I don't have a number in the thousandths place in my 12 48 hundredths, but I can add one. I can go ahead and just add a 0. And because these are different signs, like I said, we're going to be subtracting the numbers. And then so you'll get your answer. Just make sure to remember that you're going to keep the sign of the bigger number. So I'll let you figure the rest of that one out. Okay, number 13 wants you to describe the error and finding the sum. Now, the easiest way to do this, and then it also wants you to correct the error. So you're going to be choosing two answers, either one of these guys, which is you're going to be explaining the error that they made in their calculations. And then you're also going to be putting the correct form of doing it in one of these 4 options. So the easiest way to solve these problems is to actually just do it yourself. So you know this is the wrong answer because it's telling you to find find the error. You know that there's some wrong part of this, so you can go ahead and do those same steps and determine how your answers differs from theirs. And using that technique, you'll be able to figure out, okay, what they did wrong. So I'm going to let you figure that one out on your own. You should be able to knock it out pretty quickly. And then last one, exercise 20. I had a lot of people ask me questions on this problem yesterday, and I don't want you to overthink it, because this is just doing just step by step. So you're going to want to begin with that 6 plus the -4 3/4, and then after you figure out what that equals, then you're going to add the -2 and 1/8. Or maybe you want to add the negatives together first and then add the 6 to it. Either way that you want to do it is fine. Just make sure that you are doing that, turning them into improper fractions and then finding the lowest common denominator for all of them. So you're going to want to turn all of these into just some number over another number. And they're all going to have different denominators. And so you want to find the lowest common denominator of 3 denominators. And because one of those denominators is going to be 1, you're really only finding the lowest common denominator of 2 different numbers. So go ahead and you're just going to be using the same techniques we talked about in exercises at the beginning of this video in order to solve this out, but just take it step by step. So solve out your first answer and then solve out your next answer, but just remember to make sure that you keep the sign of the bigger number. I mean, just looking at these numbers, I can see that -4 plus -2 is going to give me -6, but then we also have some parts, so it's going to be greater than -6. So that's probably going to give me some sort of negative answer, because the sum of our negative numbers is going to be bigger than this positive number. So there's just a little hint for you.